Hello, I'm Betty Jo Evers from Casa Grande, Arizona, Iota chapter. I'd like to share with you 3 conversations that I had with Agnes. The first one was in 1984 at Colorado Springs at the Southwest Regional Conference. We came out of the meeting room and I went into the gift shop while everyone else tried to get on the elevators. When I came out of the gift shop, there stood Agnes and Betty Houston, who had been our keynote speaker. And so I walked up to those two and I said, Agnes, I'm Betty Jo Evers from Arizona. I am so glad to meet you. I'm a first timer at the Southwest Regional Conference and I'm just having such a good time. And she said, we're so glad you're here. Said, that's the reason we're here for first timers. And said, what is your office? And I said, I'm the state treasurer. And she said, well, you'll go to your workshop and you'll learn how to be a state treasurer. And I said, I sure will. And about that time, the elevator doors opened. Those two went in. The doors closed, and I was just standing there in awe. Then all of a sudden, I thought, oh, I need to push the button. So I pushed the button, went upstairs to the sleeping room, and I went in the door, and I said, ladies, guess what? I just talked to Agnes. And they said, really? Where? I said, at the elevator. And they said, who introduced you? And I said, no one. I just walked up and introduced myself. And they said, don't you know you're supposed to be officially introduced to Agnes? And I said, no, so much for my ADK manners. The next time I talked with Agnes was the next year in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace at the International Convention. I waited in line, a big long line, to shake her hand. And when I got there, she said, Betty Jo, we're so glad you're here. Said, you're a first timer and that's what we're here for. And you will always go to every international convention because that's where we do the bylaws and we elect our officers. And you just stay involved. And I was so excited. When I got back to the elevator, ran up to the sleeping room, and there were 9 of us in the suite. I said, ladies, guess what? I just talked to Agnes and she remembered me. And they rolled their eyes and said, how do you know? And I said, because she called me by my name and she knew I was a first timer. And they said, Betty Jo, she read your name tag. And you see that little green spot there, that little circle? That tells her you were a first timer. I went, oh, I didn't know that. Well, at the same convention, we were in another big room, a reception of some kind, and I saw Agnes with Willie Ruth, and my memory says Dorothy Vail was there too. Now I'm going to go talk to Agnes, because I know she remembers me. So I sighed over to her, and about that time Willie Ruth had to go somewhere, and then Dorothy Vail had to go somewhere, and I was pretty close to Agnes, so someone asked me if I would just hold her arm, and I said, fine. Now, I was proud as a peacock to stand there as a first-timer doing my job, holding Agnes. And all of a sudden, she looked up at me, and she went, now, you know she's very short in stature, and I'm very tall. And she went, who are you? And the room got really quiet. You could have heard it, a pin drop on the carpet. Agnes has spoken, and when Agnes speaks, we all listen. At that time, Willie Ruth came flying through the door, and she took over, and that was the end of my conversations with Agnes. But as a first-timer to a regional conference and an international convention, the personal touch is what's important. Agnes was short in stature, and we've always heard that dynamite comes in small packages. That truly applied to Agnes. Thank you.